Hi,
How
how
are
are
you?
you? I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Long time.
It's been a while. How's everything going?
Good, good. Everything is going well. I'm glad we're able to get this in at 5 o'clock. I know we had to push the time up a little bit because it's for a great cause. You're getting an award tonight, and that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It's actually my principal for the old firm that I used to work for, and she's acknowledging us as a team. So I'm
Okay,
excited about it.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So
Yeah, yeah.
thank you so much for making out the time to come today. So briefly, I know I did post your bio on my page. Oh, you have a kitty with
I
you.
do. I do. I haven't seen her all day, so she thinks this is her show. Um,
It is a show too.
yes, yes. This is a much a pet-friendly house over here. So,
Awesome, awesome.
um,
So for those that don't know you, I did post your bio on my
okay.
page. For those that
Okay.
don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay, so to date, I am a urban planning professional. I am in grad school full time at New York University, where I study urban planning and development. Um, my focus is housing and economic development, and more recently, land use, particularly in like Midwestern cities or post-industrial cities. I focus a lot on how they can come back properly and equitably,
Hmm.
whether it's put a school on a parcel of land or a bar, whatever it is that that community may or may not need.
Hmm.
Um, I actually just accepted a position as the planning project manager for the city of East Orange, where I live.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so I am pretty out and active. Um, and that's really it. You know, I kind of live for this public service kind of thing. It's been my background
Yeah,
since, early college. I started out working for now Congressman Al Lawson, who is a congressman for Florida. Moved on to the Black Caucus Foundation, where I worked on the House floor with former Speaker and Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi.
okay.
Um, and then I moved on to do the ACA work or Obamacare work through a national
Right.
organization called Young Invincibles, where we did the Virginia enrollment program. So I was immersed in the ACA work, and I've, done plenty of meetings and all the other stuff and conference calls at the White House on that
Yes,
front. Um,
awesome.
and yeah, here I am today talking to you. I know last
Again.
time, again, I know last time we talked about something that was very near and dear to my heart.
Hmm.
A few things we'll talk about today are near and dear to my heart, as I know
Yeah,
one of the candidates we'll talk
right.
about, Mayor Gillum, very personally.
Yeah.
So it's an honor and pleasure to be sitting and reflecting on what his race was like.
Awesome. Well,
Hmm.
let's welcome everybody. Welcome to the News with Obi show. At this show, we actually ask that you engage. If you have any questions for Brittany, please type it in, and both of us will see it and read it, and she will address those questions. So we want you to be pretty interactive throughout the show. Please do not shy away from asking any questions. So, Brittany,
Hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and dive into the first question that we have today. So, a few days ago, President Obama met with Texas Representative Beto O'Rourke
Hmm.
and Andrew Gillum.
Okay.
And this was after their midterm losses, as we already know. Both are
Right.
seen as potential 2020 Democratic presidential candidates. Do
Right.
you think this could possibly be a winning ticket?
Honestly, so shout out to Andrew Gillum, who is a rattler like me. He went to Florida A&M University.
Yeah.
There are quite a few mayors actually that have went to Florida A&M University. So obviously, we're pumping out good products.
Awesome.
We're pumping out good citizens, good American citizens, which I appreciate being a part of that alumni network. So shout out to him and his whole team and all of the people who worked so hard. It was very close. And as we saw in a lot of the governor's races where someone of a minority status was up, it was very close, meaning that the country is really shifting,
Right.
right? So
Right.
we're not seeing this like Snow White view of America anymore. So
Exactly.
it does speak to the fear that America's browning, and it is.
Yeah.
So do I think that there'll be a good presidential, like this will be a good presidential win or a potential win? Possibly, right? Like, who are we to say no? And as a person who does not support anything that's coming out of the current administration, I hopefully, like, and have high hopes of that being a winning ticket. Would I like to see a woman in the mix?
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I don't want to repeat is the whole, the two male dynamic.
Do
What
you
my
think
frustration.
America is ready for a woman president though?
I think they're ready for the right woman. Is that to say that Mrs. Clinton, who is awesome and was the most qualified candidate and was even probably more qualified by, experience than even our favorite president, is that to say that she's not qualified? No. But what I will say, though, is that as the left becomes more left, we need more women who are more aligned in terms of left views that don't have to be I'm sorry, I'm looking for the word, that don't have to be they don't have to be pushed to the left. They're kind of already there, right? There's no record of them, downing, black folks during the crack era. There's no record of them, they were kind of with, the program from beginning to end. So
Currently though, do you think we have any woman? I mean, I know Elizabeth Warren was contemplating. I know.
Honestly, Elizabeth Warren, as much as I would like Michelle or Oprah to run,
they're not.
or Mrs. Obama, they're not. Elizabeth's not that bad of a choice. Right? She's not that bad of a choice. But with all the brown women that we saw elected to Congress, are we ready? Yeah. I mean, the answer is like, why not? Right. You know what I mean? Like, we saw so many women elected to Congress, and, even around the states, you have all these black women and brown women who are being elected to, seats that were not currently, occupied by them. Yeah, I mean, exactly. not currently, but not previously occupied by them. So
we had the first Muslim woman also that was elected as well. So I think the shift is beginning to happen.
Right, the shift's happening, and anything at that point that I can do to be a part of that shift, as I have worked most of my career to be a part of it, I will. But honestly, I think we're ready. I think Beto O'Rourke's a great candidate? Yeah. Do I think Andrew Gillum's a great candidate? Absolutely. And it's not just because I know him personally, but I just think he's an all-around good, decent candidate and somebody who's going to fight for exactly what it is that real people believe in, right? Yeah. Because the notion that we all have the same belief of, saving taxes for rich and all that, that's just a small part of America. That's not real America. But the Andrew Gillum story, if you've heard him tell it, it's the story of real Americans. And so do I think he has just as good of a shot as the Cory Bookers and the Obamas that we saw? Absolutely, yes. But do I think we need to mix that conversation up a little with women being thrown into pot as a vice president candidate or even a presidential candidate? Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword with me.
Yeah, and to anybody watching, if you know any woman candidate at this moment that you think can take Trump, please put that in the comment. We'll like to, address that and talk about that.
Yeah, and honestly, if Elizabeth Warren, she'll get the folks out.
She will.
She will get the folks out, right? But we'll see. I'm not God. I'm not the higher being, so I can't say what's going to happen. But if this last congressional race was any indication of where we're going, then I think that America is very much ready for.
And I call him Uncle Bernie, Uncle Joe Biden. They've also said that they're think about running in 2020. So you never know. I know Joe Biden will definitely get people out.
Joe will get folks out. And Joe's another one. Joe Biden, who I have met a few times and have seen him in action a few times during my time in the district. He has it. And he's always had it. And
Experience all of that. He has it.
Experience all that. Do I think though it's time for some younger folks to get in there?
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that there's a time for intergenerational shifts in the way we look at politics. Just as much as race, we have to talk about the generations that exist within politics. And do I think that some of our more seasoned candidates need to step out of the way? No, I won't even go so far as to say that. But I do think that it's time for some younger candidates, and not even just candidates, but younger public administrators. We need younger secretaries of HUD. We need younger secretaries of
that are connected to the community, that knows
that
what's
are
going
connected
on.
to the community, but also who have put their skin in the game. Because I don't believe just putting in rookies either, right? So I think the rationale behind having some of our folks who are veterans be there is to be the conscious and to have wisdom and to understand how things really work. And bureaucracy is an old system, and it very rarely changes. And so you do need folks in there that are committed. But I think that there are more than enough young people who are putting skin in the game, who are ready to lead, who are stepping up and saying, hey, I'm ready to do this, right? Yeah. And that's not just on the elected front, right? Because we forget sometimes that we need a health and human services administrator, who's younger. We need a HUD secretary who has,
where is our HUD secretary? Nobody hears from him.
Okay, it's interesting. Okay, so he's a Detroit native, and so am I. So I'm not going to tread too heavy. Right?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not going to tread too heavy because he doesn't speak for all of the people.
Yeah.
He doesn't speak for all of the people who, are from Detroit. But
we're going to address your questions in a little bit when Brittany's finished with that. Yeah.
And I see Dante saying that young folks that are mature, and that's very much true. We live in a social media age. But I'll also say to that point, we're going to address those later, but I'll also say to that point, young folks that are mature, but that can show people that it's okay to be you, right? I think that we did the code switching for a long time, and to show people that as a young politician, we want to be our whole selves and be accepted for who we are. But also be mature enough to take on some real issues. Exactly. But yeah, Dante, you're absolutely right.
And Wonderlust was asking, do you feel that the DNC waited a bit too late to groom younger candidates to take on Trump?
Yeah, so I think the DNC, God bless them. I think that that's a tough question, right? That's a tough question to ask politically. I think that everybody who is involved has waited too late. That's not a DNC thing. That's a everybody thing. If you're an elected official right now, and you have not taken the time to groom somebody that can take on this your position, then you have failed us, failed the next generation in terms of running this country, right? Because as I found out recently, as I've experienced some losses of some close people to me, you find out that life is very short and that everybody ain't going to stay around a long time, nor should you look to, right? As we saw with the Dean of Congress, John Conyers, who had to vacate his seat, you know what I'm saying? So if you're not taking out the time to, groom the next generation, and I mean really groom them in a way that's not where they don't have to pay any dues to you and it's very selfless, right? Selflessly groom, not selfishly, but selflessly groom other candidates to do what it is that you're doing, then I think that a lot of people who are elected from the city and local level all the way up have failed, honestly.
So while we're talking about that, since we're still in it, I want to get to the next question. A few days ago, history was made in Arkansas. They elected the first Black mayor, who's 35-year-old Frank Scott. He's the third Black mayor Little Rock has had. The previous two were appointed. And this is significant for Little Rock because historically we know the issues they've had with segregation. What is your take on that?
It's funny because this is not a something that's new and that hasn't been on the rise, right? We saw the mayor of St. Paul, Mayor Melvin Carter, who is a national star, right?
Right.
And his being the first elected mayor to St. Paul, Minnesota, where
Exactly.
it's the twin city to Minneapolis. And we saw this kind of, we saw two kind of shifts. We saw the rise of the white mayor in predominantly historically black cities,
Black,
like
right.
Detroit, where we saw Mayor Duggan take his seat, and we saw that. So it was almost like this, oh my God, your city's messed up. We need a white mayor to fix this, after you get your emergency manager and all that. And then we see this other, this other undertow or undercurrent where you got other cities who had some real issues of racism that are, getting black mayors.
Right.
And again, I think that none of this is anything short of, I won't say it's the Trump backlash, right? Because a lot of people say that Trump being elected was white backlash to President Obama, but I wouldn't say that this is like black or brown backlash. I think it's just people recognizing that
people are being more conscious of what's going on.
people are being more conscious of what's going on, but also people are recognizing that in order for me to care about you or believe in you as a politician, you have to represent me, who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, we see a lot of black and brown folks who are on the side of real people, because our story in this country has been that of the average American. Either we came through, as immigrant families, or, we have the stories of the average American. And once you can show that to people, and you kind of stick true to that, victories happen, particularly at a time where you have hatred, in office. And the only thing that can rule out hatred, as we know, is love. So, with the Arkansas race, this is not the first time we saw this. We saw, Miss Lance Bottoms in Georgia, and we see black mayors coming up all across the country and all up through the ranks. And so, am I happy that this happened? Yes. Is it a new phenomenon? No. But what I would charge any mayor that is coming up in cities like that is, don't yield to the pressure. Don't be the figurehead that is smiling for the black people or smiling for the people, but gilding in these back rooms, making deals that favor folks that don't look like us. I think that also is another trend where we see black politicians and brown politicians and minority politicians don't always equal real policy that affect us, that really, really get to the root of who we are. They tend to just be figureheads that hold those positions. And so, am I happy that it's happening? Yes, because representation matters. But my larger question is, at what rate are we really, really pushing radically to make sure that your presence really equals policies that affect us positively, and make sure that we're on a, upward, economic, trajectory and all that stuff. So,
we'll just wait and see.
We'll just wait and see. But I would challenge anybody who's being elected in any position where they have influence, and particularly in those states that haven't seen any minority influence in a long time, to really legislate. Like, really, really legislate it and go after it full force. Let it go on the record that while you were there, you did more than smile and say, hey, I'm the first black person to ever do this. Like, what legislation are you passing? What are you vetoing? Because just because you're, the mayor doesn't mean that you have a council that has your back. Or like what is it that you're
you gotta
really
fight
for? What are you standing for? Right? Like, I would rather you legislate than take a picture with you any day to say that you were the first black anything. But am I happy that it's happening? Yes, but this is not new, right? It's just another state that we've won over, or another city that we've won over to say that, hey, we can rise above this.
And Taron is saying, I think that younger people are more aware and involved since politics have dumped into social media as well. And that goes with what everybody's saying. I see F4 saying, I think we need some younger people in the midst. And everybody's agreeing with what you've been saying so far, that we need young people to really come in and shake things up a little bit.
Yeah. So I think I will say that social media has played a large role. I do think that I am very proud of the people that we look to for influence, like celebrities also, who are coming out, speaking out about things. I know, and you know, whatever these people's personal profiles are, whatever their personal issues are in the tabloids, that's you know, left up to, you know, a higher power to judge. But I have seen where a lot of, you know, celebrities have shown their activism, speaking out against garbage. You know, Jimmy Kimmel's, you know, Fallon's, and you know,
Trevor Noah,
Trevor Noah, and we see Chris, even down to Chris Brown's, and you know, Cardi B, who is telling people to vote. And so, and people also being able to see the injustices, right? Because everybody has a video phone, and people are, while they traumatize me, those videos traumatize me, people are really coming out saying, hey, yo, you know, these killings aren't what's up.
Yeah.
You know, you have little children who are filming commercials about why it's important to get out and vote. And you have, you know, candidates. I know Keisha Lance Bottoms, who her social media campaign was ridiculous. She had every celebrity that I could think of, you know, out here talking about vote for her, whether they lived in the city or not. Right. And so I do think social media plays a really, really large role in it. And I do think that social media activism has kind of added some innovation to the way we think about politics, to the way we get the word out. Because not only do you have the younger generation on Instagram, but you got some people get their news from Facebook. Whether it's right or wrong is another thing. But they get their news from Facebook. I can't tell you how many times my father told me he went on ohmygod.com and saw that some fish or something wasn't good for us. So, oh my God. You know, but the thing is, it's engaging people who wouldn't otherwise read news. Yeah. Right. And then God forbid somebody posts a status or their opinion on top of the ohmygod.com article. Now you got a whole debate going on. Right. And so regardless to whether those of us who are a little bit more educated think it's credible or not, at least there are dialogues happening about what people really think via social media. And there are people who wouldn't otherwise be engaged.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of people. Yeah. I've had a lot of people actually tell me, oh, yeah, we come to the News with Obi to get our news updates. I'm like, oh, are you sure? They're like, yeah, because you know what? You give us little sound bites and it's accurate and we don't have to go watch CNN and the rest of them. I'm like, hey, that's why I created this, because I can't eat, drink, sleep news. But since you don't want to watch it, I'll do it for you and break it down. So if you want to come and watch, hey, you know, thanks to you.
But it's true though. It's very much true, and I'm happy about it. I mean, I'm happy to engage my family members who would be like, "Hey, listen here, Brittany. You know, I know you do this politics thing. Let me ask you something." You know, I'm all for it. I am all for it. I'm all for the knockdown, drag out opinions, regardless to whether myself is somebody who's involved in the process, regardless to what my very educated opinions are. It is always a blessing and a breath of fresh air to get into sometimes even an argument with somebody who got their news on Facebook.
And correct them, you know, if they're wrong.
Not even correct them, but understand that you're engaged, right? And you're even open to having a conversation that people aren't having, right? Like, I'm from Detroit, Michigan, right? Like, I grew up watching the news, but it wasn't to watch it for, you know, to talk about how I felt about politics. You know, there was typically this one track mind. We with the Democratic Party because we, you know, this is the way we think. And rarely did you find a Republican or anything like that. So my opinions have evolved, but also recognizing that everybody's opinions are evolving, whether it's, you know, your cousin that could care less, you know, but saw something on Facebook, or whether it's the person that you sit in class with or sit at work with every day talking about these issues on a very high level, you know, at a very high level. And for me, sometimes I'd rather not have those conversations and have it with somebody at the bus stop who just so happened to be reading ohmygod.com.
Exactly.
You know? So.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We are glad to have you here. I know we started a little bit early, but we're making it happen, and thanks for chiming in as well. So speaking of your hometown, Detroit, Michigan, I want to talk about Flint, Michigan, and the water crisis. What is the latest update on that? Talk to us about that.
All right. Okay. So, you know, it's funny because whenever I don't live in Michigan right now, I actually live in Jersey. And whenever I say I'm from Detroit, right? And Dante, we're going to get to you in a second because it's a good question. I So I live in Jersey now, and whenever I say anything about Detroit, people are like, "Oh my God." So what about Flint? Y'all got that dirty water in Detroit. I'm like, first of all, if Flint decided to go with the Detroit water in the first place, we wouldn't be in this predicament.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there. We're not gonna go there, right?
Right.
But I had the privilege of working on a campaign in Michigan, and we had to go up to Flint to do some outreach work this summer. And having been physically in Flint, which was actually, ironically, living in Michigan my whole life, I had never been to Flint before until I actually had to work there this summer. And it's still, after the cameras have left, after these people have donated these miraculous amounts of money, people are still suffering. People are still getting water distributions, and people are still, seeing the of like this need. They can't take a bath to fix it. And so obviously the EPA has been a strong critic of the way Flint has ran their water program. And for those people who don't really know what happened in Flint, long story short, once they recognized that it was a problem, instead of paying, surrounding cities or Detroit, or instead of paying for water out of the pure lake of Port Huron, they decided to go to a long-time river that we know is filthy.
Exactly.
And it's only right that it's filthy, because to Flint's credit, it was at one point one of the greatest industrial cities that was thriving.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it had automobile plants, and people were living and thriving there. But as we have seen, industrial lines of work and industrial plants and all that, they damage infrastructure, natural resources. And so that is a byproduct of us building what we call the American dream, and people being able to build their dreams. That was a negative, what we call a negative externality of it, but it is what it is, and that's what we have today. And instead of doing what was necessary, some leaders decided that they were going to be cheap and reroute it to the Flint, the water sources that they have there. And it caused a real issue. And this is just educating someone who's watching who may not really know. All they're hearing is that, oh my God, there's lead in the water. Yeah. But this is how we got here. And now that we're here, a judge back home ruled that, hey, there's sufficient evidence to charge, Nick Lyon, who was the state's Health and Human Services director, with involuntary manslaughter. He had a responsibility to let folks know and to do what was right. And sometimes politics will have it, particularly when it's politics that negatively affect poor communities. Because as you see that, unlike Detroit is up in the high 80% African American, right? But Flint, it's diverse poverty. It's black and white poverty, right? It's almost as many white people in Flint as it is blacks and other races. And so it's just an impoverished place in general, right? And so what we saw was people willing to risk the poor, risk the lives of the poor. And we see that that's also not something it's not surprising. Yeah. That's always been the case of the United States. And while we can applaud, Nick, them for convicting Nick Lyon for involuntary manslaughter, we have to understand what measures are going to be taken, to do it. And some candidates, who were running in this year's governor's race were saying, hey, we're going to make sure that they test all the pipes for lead and remove all the pipes. And it's going to be a very long process, because the Industrial Revolution happened hundreds of years ago. This didn't happen overnight.
Are they suing them, and are people going to get compensated?
So the stories are mixed, right? So the cases are mixed. I think it's a case-by-case basis. Are people going to get compensated? That's up in the air, right? Like, to what extent people are going to get compensated? So they are going to compensate folks. We know that for sure, right? But to what extent they'll be compensated, that's another conversation for another show, because I don't necessarily know, and we don't see enough forecasting on that. And, you know, folks who are watching who know, feel free to chime in. But what I do know is that they are in the works of doing some real preventative measures around making sure that people's pipes are checked, like piping and new piping is going to be a thing.
So
And
is
then
it still like people still got to drink water from the water bottles and all that kind of stuff, like heavily?
yes, no, that very much is the case. People aren't taking real showers and real baths, right? Like they're getting there. But when I was there, people were not taking. They were using filtered water in the McDonald's, and, you know, trying to. We had enough water bottles when we went up there in the vans, and, you know, people were still getting water distributions at churches. And, you know, I saw that there were murals talking about what was going on in Flint with the water, and you talk to regular residents who were saying, hey, I still haven't gotten a distribution in X amount of time. You know, somebody tell me what they did with all the money that was donated here. Where did it go? So you have everyday citizens who are still waiting on answers, right? Yeah. And to the credit of, you know, people who are in public service, we know that these things are slow processes, but this also speaks to the importance of preventative measures and how bureaucracy and government as we know it can't continue to happen, because it's not always preventative. This could have been prevented with just a little bit of notification, just somebody opening their mouths and saying something and caring enough for people who may not have the money. Okay, taxes, you know, the tax base may not be there, but this didn't happen to people in the rich towns around. You know, it happened in Flint. And if you look at the poverty index in Flint, you'll be able to see why. And that's the story of the United States. Things
compared to when something similar happened in California, which was made a movie out of it, the Aaron Brockovich movie, the Hickley.
Oh my
God! They ended up compensating all those people. You know, so
oh my God,
and that was a rich neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, right? And you know, even as I saw Jamie Foxx, and I love Jamie Foxx, but I saw him say, you know, we really want to pray for people and this and that and the third. And I understand that we want to pray for people, but and this is not to do the struggle Olympics, right? My struggle is bigger than yours and all of that. This is not to say that that's what we're doing. I don't want to go there. But what I do want to say is, like, when things happen to rich people, things move. And it just really speaks to the power of money in the United States, which also speaks to more effort being put into making sure that people are able to move up economically, right? Like, and not shaming folks of color who want to make that their primary goal in life, because being poor in the United States is not fun. However, having had perspective as I've gotten older, I recognize that being poor in America compared to other places is a thing, right? And, like, it's something to be also grateful for and to check our privileges and to count our blessings that we do live in one of the greatest countries, but also understanding that for us to live in one of the greatest countries, this is not acceptable because they have the money. It can be done, right? And so that's the double-sided part to it.
I want you to address, I believe it's Dante's question. He said, I don't know if this is off topic, but how do you feel that two GM plants are closing and Trump told the president of General Motors that they have to come up with a plan?
You know, I think so. Dante, who's also a Detroit native, anybody from Detroit or Michigan in general, or the middle of the country, you know, the automobile industry is so important to us. It is huge, and it's important to us, and it's something that we hold near and dear because our entire economy, everything we know,
depends on it.
It depends on it, and it was built on that. And so I can recognize how the closing of a plant can kind of shake up folks, and it should. What I will say, though, is that as these automobile industry companies were being bailed out, we all also know that it was moving towards automation anyway.
Mm.
And so that only leaves us, even it may have created more jobs than what we had, or it may have sustained more jobs than what we had. But the automobile industry, particularly in the form of a plant where people are stamping and it's real industrial like it used to be, whether it's slow or fast, in because there's automation in a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what we end up seeing is plants that may have needed 100 folks on the line are dwindling down to 10 and 20, maybe even
Right.
5, maybe even one person operating a machine. And so the closing of the plants are not surprising. However, as with any response that is made by this Trump character that we call the president, it's really weird because on one end you understand why plants are closing because you understand that the automation is a thing. And even when President Obama was in office, it was explained that, hey, your jobs are not coming. Are you there? Hold on.
Yeah, I'm here. It's the
I hope I didn't
connection.
lose
The
you.
connection is kind of slow. I'm here.
Okay, I hope I didn't lose you.
No, I'm
But
here.
but Trump's responses to anything just make me just kind of like gag a little bit, right? Because
I know.
it
does.
is not like everybody's clear that he has no clue what he's doing.
Right.
Should the presidents of GM and those folks who are in charge of those plants come up with a plan? Absolutely. Yes, that is your job. That's what you get paid millions of dollars to do. And you sit in Rochester Hills or whatever suburbs you live in Michigan. That's what you get paid and live comfortably to do, is come up with a plan. You absolutely should be coming up with a plan. But is it also the responsibility of the president to step in the same way we saw our beloved President Obama do? Absolutely. Yeah. So what do I think about it? I don't think what I actually think about it is appropriate for a news platform. But that's his life. That's what we're dealing with in the White House. And I think we have to kind of just say, hey, what are we going to do in spite of?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the last topic we have. Dante
Wait
back
a minute,
again.
but before we do that, hold on. It says Dante says, but the argument is we got GM out of the deficit, and now we have thousands of people losing their jobs. Very true, but what I will say to that, and I know this provides no comfort at all, because I study it all the time. I study Middle America, and my client, my major area of focus in school is like Detroit and Cleveland. We did bail out. GM was bailed out. And people are losing their jobs now, but those of us who have been watching this for a while, kind of anticipated that because automation is taking over everything. And as much as I love President Obama, I wish that it was communicated more to folks how delicate and fragile their jobs would be, because I have several friends, and just watching the plants now, folks are going in on pensions and all this retirement stuff that they used to. People are going in on temporary contracts anyway. You may be working tonight, but you may not work tomorrow night, or your contract may end. You're going in as a temp anyway. So your job and your place at that plant is on an as-needed basis, and it's very, very fragile, right? Like any small thing you do, it's at will. And, yes, we have unions, and yes, we have all these things, but people are losing jobs that were not permanent anyway. If you see some of these contracts that people are signing, that it's good money, but it's good money while you're there,
right?
Because there were no guarantees. And so, if there are any folks who are watching who have worked in the plants and who have who've done it, that it's a real fragile business now. And even when they bailed out folks, and even when they bailed out the industry, it was nowhere near as many jobs that came back as what we once saw, when you could graduate high school, go take a little apprenticeship class, and you had a
And
job that
get a
would sustain
job.
you through,
Yeah.
yeah, that would sustain you that would sustain a family, that would sustain a household, that would carry you through retirement. I think those times are long gone. And I think, I won't say that I would never blame or victim blame people who are already hurting and say that they were naive, because when you have to feed your family, you have to feed your family, and you'll do that by any
Right.
means necessary. And so I won't blame them for being, naively hopeless. Hopeful. Sorry, naively
Yeah.
hopeful.
Right.
But what I will say is that this was something that could have been anticipated
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's get to this question, and this was a topic that we discussed last time when you were here. We talked about the opioid versus crack crisis in the Black community.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And we
mm-hmm.
haven't heard much about that topic in terms of the opioid topic in the news lately. Any
Yeah.
updates that we need to know about on that?
So things kind of go in waves, particularly with media.
Yeah.
So it's still very much an issue.
Yeah.
But we should, us as Americans, we shift from this to that to this to that. Do I still stand on the same thing that when it was in Black communities, it was, a crime?
Right.
Yeah, but I think the
Mm-hmm.
conversation has shifted more towards the positive drugs in a positive light, around cannabis and marijuana and the legalization of it, which Michigan did do.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be an opportunity for folks to really make money. So that's when it comes to drugs and recreational drugs, or people being high because, we find ourselves fascinated with, different forms of the drug conversation over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I think legalization of marijuana has kind of overtaken that conversation, and oftentimes we don't want to talk about things that affect our dear beloved, and I'm being sarcastic when I say this, our beloved and cherished, valued citizens of the United States. And the opioid crisis
Mm-hmm.
was, is killing the folks that America holds true. And so why
Yeah.
why why do we want to get caught up on exposing what is killing white folks, and why would we
Right.
want to get caught up on exposing anything beyond letting people know that we're going to be serious about it?
Right.
But thus is life. I do think that, again, the conversation around marijuana and legalization and how the programs are going to look, and are we going to start exonerating people who went to prison, or who have faced felony charges on possession of marijuana, this thing that we are trying to idolize now.
Mm-hmm.
How are we
Mm-hmm.
going to, the question is, how are we expunging records, and how are we empowering people in communities to get in front of the thing that we innovated, that we created the innovation around anyway?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The black market was something that we were feeding families off of, whole cities, and it was
Mm-hmm.
criminalized. And so, do I think that's kind of taking the conversation over? Yeah. Do I think how states that are legalizing are going to make it look right for them, and not California, and like how they're going to make it work, and how legislatures are going to work together to build custom programs for their state respectively? I think that that's kind of overshadowed the conversation a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah. So.
we'll watch and see how that plays out. But like you said, with the CBD oil and CBD, all of that being legalized, is really taking over the main
Mhm.
issue of
Mhm.
opioids. So
Mhm.
we'll see how that plays out when the media decides to pick it up again.
Yeah.
We'll see
Yeah.
what
And
they have to say. Hmm.
it's not something that I've forgotten about, right? Because again, it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and a lot of where I draw my historical context from, in the way that I look at cities now and how they're coming back now. Not only do I look at it from its start, I look at it from that 1978 through 2000 time frame, because that's when we
Right.
saw the decline of so many cities through crack. And I really just can't get over the fact that people want to build these swanky coffee shops and all these things that really bring up the economic development in communities, but nobody wants to talk about or acknowledge what happened that made these cities the way that they are. You know, when we talk about redevelopment, we talk about how rich and beautiful the urban fabric and the ruins of these urban cities are, nobody wants to talk about what destroyed it. Nobody wants to revisit that. Nobody wants to go back and look at a New Jack City film and have panel discussions around what really happened. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to talk about how people were being locked down and shut off from their families, even with marijuana being a part of that, you know, conversation, right?
Yeah.
So, you want to get me worked up? Let's talk about you know, let's talk about that, right? And I see that Dante says that he's here to support his friend, and I appreciate and love you so much for that.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. Thank you for contributing, and I can't thank you enough, Brittany, for really making out the time to always come on the show and talk about important issues affecting the community. I really appreciate everything you do. I appreciate everything you do for the community. I appreciate you as a person, you know, just really, even today, even though, you know, you had, you found out you had a schedule conflict, you really made it a point to still come on, and I really, really appreciate that.
Listen, you're a special sister, and I'll, in any way that I can work with you, I'm honored to do so. I'm honored to, you know, be able to be asked to even sit on this platform. I think what you're doing is great. I tune in to, you know, I watch you on YouTube after you do the new shows, and I've watched several of them, and so everything that you're doing is great. Anytime you need me, I'm here. It's just a joy and a pleasure to just talk about what's really going on from a real perspective. Because oftentimes, you know, TV, you know, there are talking points that, you know, become very political, where people can't really address issues, you know, on a real level. And the fact that you bring news to the people and you kind of meet them where they are is very admirable, and it's something that I'll always be, you know, honored to be a part of. So until next time, you know, I'll be watching.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for tuning in. And the show will be posted on YouTube in a few days. If you want to go back and watch it, it's going to be on the News with Obi YouTube page, and I'm going to post a little snippet of it on my Instagram page as well. So thank you everybody for taking out time from your Friday evening to actually be on this show and
thank you.
Chime in tonight.
Thank you. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Hey, y'all. Thank you.